is Tyler Wieswensky, and I have been a moderator for several years. Today, we are holding a panel to inform you, undergraduates, about the pros, the cons, and the various opinions on legalization of marijuana. We have 5 panelists here today, all experts in their respective fields with a stance on legalization of marijuana. I'm going to first introduce Brendan Jagger. He is an economist. He takes a neutral stance on the legalization of marijuana. Next we have Simona Salvaggi. She is a journalist who takes a positive stance. In the middle here we have Naomi Gomez, who is a chief police officer who takes a positive stance on the legalization of marijuana. Next to her we have Dennis Flesch. He is a doctor who will be taking a negative stance today. And we have Amanda Marco, who is a professor of law, and she takes a negative stance on the legalization of marijuana. I'm going to set some ground rules for the panel today. Each panelist will be required to answer 3 questions asked by me. Each panelist will be given a maximum of 2 minutes to answer each question. If you feel you need more time, panelists, please indicate me before, and you will be allotted 1 extra minute. Panelists, please answer questions that only I ask you. Audience, please hold your questions till the end. We will hold a 5-minute Q&A session with a maximum of 3 questions asked. Please direct your questions toward me, and I will direct them toward a panelist if you do not direct the question toward one. Audience and panel, please behave accordingly. Let's begin. First question. Brendan, what is your stance on the legalization of marijuana?
Hello, my name is Brendan. I am an economist. My stance remains neutral on marijuana legalization nationwide. The pros of marijuana legalization, as you all know, is a big one. It can be taxed. And Colorado, through the years of 2014 to 2015, raised $60 million in tax revenue alone. So that is, so that can be used to be paying off our debt or whatever you need to pay off. Also, it can be used as for raw material replacement for manufacturers, which can lower consumer price products. But also, marijuana has several cons. Full-scale regulation will probably cost a lot to maintain and regulate. And also, drug manufacturers and healthcare users may lose out on sales due to the marijuana legalization.
Thank you very much. Simona, what is your stance on the legalization of marijuana?
Good morning everyone. I'm Simona. I'm a journalist, and my stance is in favor because I strongly believe that the legalization of marijuana could drop the criminality in the U.S. Imagine how many illegal sellers do we have, and how much do they earn from their illegal job. And so now, if we make marijuana legal, they will not have an illegal job anymore, and the government could earn more money.
Thank you very much. Naomi, what is your stance on the legalization of marijuana?
Hi, I'm Naomi, and I am for legalization of marijuana because we have seen in universities that are in states that have legalized marijuana a decrease in use and more harmful substances like alcohol, cocaine, or heroin have decreased in use. So therefore, it has in turn created a more safer environment for students to live and learn, and has decreased the risk and expenses to universities.
Thank you very much. Dennis, what is your stance on the legalization of marijuana?
Thank you very much for your invitation to this panel. Once again, my name is Dennis, and my stance on the legalization of marijuana is that we should definitely not allow it in our country because of the numerous negative health effects it brings with it. We cannot play these issues down as we just did with tobacco many years ago. Tobacco now is the #1 leading cause for cardiovascular diseases and lung cancer in the United States and poses a huge economic burden due to direct medical costs and lost productivity. I don't want marijuana to rise on the same level.
Thank you. Amanda, what is your stance on the legalization of marijuana?
Hello, my name is Amanda, and I am against the legalization of marijuana because as a professor, the negative effects that marijuana has caused on my students and their lifestyle, work ethic, and grades inside and outside the classroom.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to our second question. Brendan, what are the economic advantages and disadvantages of marijuana legalization?
Well, economically speaking, we know that marijuana is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and if made legal on a nationwide scale, and there was a study that predicted the amount of revenue gained from taxes, and it's a 2005 Harvard study that predicted that $7.7 billion could be generated just on taxes alone, and then also the cut rates for law enforcement against criminals. All those savings amount to about $6.6 billion annually. So all around, the savings and revenue around $10 to $14 billion annually. Also, the disadvantages is that drug manufacturers can lose out on potential sales. Also, full-scale regulation will be extremely costly and could be very costly. And insurance companies can put higher rates on marijuana users, thus increasing the premiums made for health insurance and auto insurance on marijuana users. And possibly it might not eliminate the black market of marijuana due to the tax increase on marijuana itself.
Thank you very much. Simona, in which ways can the legalization of marijuana drop the incarceration rates?
According to the journal PLOS ONE, researchers at the University of Texas at Dallas demonstrated that the legalization of marijuana leads to less incidents to violent crimes such as homicide or assault. Moreover, it could also lead to a reduction in alcohol-induced criminal activity. And finally, this, as a consequence of the legalization, we can have more effective law enforcement, since police officers have more time and money to spend in investigating other crimes instead of spending like $1 trillion just for investigating suspected criminals for drugs crimes and like growers or dealers.
Thank you very much. Naomi, what can you say about marijuana-related crimes or incidents on university campuses?
So we know that the greatest problem drug on campuses is alcohol. It has been shown to lead to aggressive and violent behavior, sexual assault on campuses, vandalism, and has overall greater health risks than marijuana does. For example, 90% of all campus rapes involve an assailant or a victim who had been drinking alcohol, as well as 95% of all campus assaults are alcohol-related. So marijuana does not cause little to none or anywhere near as many problems as alcohol does on campuses. So when we compare the two, alcohol and marijuana, we would rather see marijuana on campuses than alcohol because it decreases expenses to the university and can create a safer environment for students to learn. And I would rather be writing a citation to a student for having too much possession of marijuana than sending one to the hospital for possible alcohol poisoning.
Thank you. Dennis, what age do you think that an individual should be introduced to marijuana?
Well, since I am against the legalization, I don't want people to be introduced to it at all. Short-term effects like reduced ability to react and impaired decision-making, along with perceptual deficits even after the high subsides, pose a huge risk on traffic and drivers in general. Drivers fail to recognize their impairment even more than they do with alcohol. On the other hand, we have long-term effects for chronic users. According to Rebecca Donatel, joints contain 50 to 70% more carcinogen hydrocarbons and higher amounts of tar than usual cigarettes. This leads to higher risks for cancer, lung disorders, and cardiovascular diseases. In addition to that, according to recent estimates, 10% of all users will develop dependence, and even more people will use it as a gateway drug.
Thank you. Amanda, what age do you think that an individual should be educated on marijuana?
I think an individual should be educated on marijuana starting at the age of 11 or 12 because kids should know about the negative effects that marijuana has, especially if it distracts from their education and affects their lifestyle. According to a recent study, children can start using cannabis around the age 15. And while marijuana dependence is rare than the dependence for other drugs, it still does happen. This shows that if kids learned about the negative effects of the drug early on, in the same way we say children learn about cigarettes, then maybe people would feel less comfortable using the drug or starting to use the drug, and there would be less uncertainty about what the drug does to the body.
Thank you. Panelists, this will be your third and final question. Brendan, how will legal marijuana users be labeled or handled by auto and health insurance companies?
Let's start with health insurance companies. Health insurance companies could possibly rate marijuana users as a higher risk profile than non-marijuana smokers. As stated, the health hazards, as stated before, this could cause an increase in premiums in order to cover those health hazards. As for your vehicle insurance, suppose you get in a wreck and you're the cause of it, and you smoked maybe like a day later, and marijuana is detected in your system. If that would allow you probably a fine, and also if your vehicle insurance companies figure out could raise your rates, although you were sober. It was the day before. So, with that said, at a nationwide scale, insurance companies can catch on and probably raise rates for marijuana users. And to conclude, although marijuana has a lot of financial benefits, it also has a lot of costly social dilemmas as well. And that's why I remain neutral.
Thank you very much. Sana, how can prisons benefit with the legalization of marijuana?
The marijuana traffic leads to a gross overrepresentation of criminals in jails and prisons all across the U.S. According to an article of the Daily Dot, 1 in 4 people is in jail just because non-offensive drugs crimes. So marijuana-related arrests make up a significant law enforcement just for actions involving drugs. And this means that cutting down on the number of men in prison for drugs, the government would cut prison costs dramatically. And for this reason, I'm highly in favor of the legalization.
Thank you very much. Naomi, what do you see happening on university campuses if marijuana was legalized?
If marijuana was legalized, I expect to see less problems because if you decrease in use of alcohol, so all those property damages, assaults should be going down, as well as less expenses to the university. For example, the university won't have to spend as much money on property damage, counseling centers for students who deal with alcoholism, less security, and if there was a case, decreased chances in the university being sued by a student for an alcohol incident. And so this would allow us to, and the money could actually benefit, the money saved to benefit students or the university in positive ways. And this would allow us to put more effective and greater focus on other crimes not drug related for the university. And this will create a safer environment. And like I said, it would decrease expenses for the university. So that's why I am for marijuana legalization.
Thank Dennis, do you agree with medical marijuana use?
Unfortunately, I can't answer this question with a clear yes or no because there has been only little research on this topic. I agree with using it in medications that harness therapeutic benefits while eliminating its negative side effects. Positive benefits would be, for example, reduced muscle pain. On the other hand, people believe it relieves symptoms of depression and anxiety. But as the high wears off, the depression will even worsen. Since the many negative health effects outnumber its medical benefits, I am against the legalization of marijuana, especially for recreational use, but I am pro further research on its medical chances.
Thank you. Amanda, do you notice a difference in your students that use marijuana and those that do not?
I do notice a difference in students that use marijuana and those that do not, because it is very obvious when a student comes to class high. They are more likely to fall asleep because they are tired or sluggish, but usually for the most part, the students that are high in class are just not focusing, and they don't remember the majority of what is talked about in class, so they're not learning the necessary material, and they're missing valid information about the class and the assignments. And according to the National Center of Addiction and Substance Abuse, marijuana use is correlated negatively with academic performance, and marijuana abuse is increasing on college campuses across the country. So students' grades and drive for success are more likely to drop. And that is why I am against the legalization of marijuana.
Thank you very much. Thank you, panelists, for answering the questions. Thank you, Brendan Jagger. He is an economist, and he took a neutral stance today on the economic aspects and benefits and costs that would involve the legalization of marijuana. I'd like to thank Simona Salvaggi, who is a journalist, and she took a positive stance today on the legalization of marijuana so that prison occupancy can lower for those who have marijuana-related crimes, and the incarceration rates of marijuana-related crimes can go down as well. I would thank Naomi Gomez, who is a chief police officer, and she took a positive stance, on legalization of marijuana, so other substances like alcohol and harder drugs can be replaced with a safer substance such as marijuana on university campuses. I'd like to thank Dennis Flesch, who is a doctor who took a negative stance on legalization of marijuana because of the short and long-term effects on the human body and mind. Yet he is pro-research and possible use for medical applications of marijuana. And lastly, I'd like to thank Amanda Marco, who is a professor of law. She took a negative stance because of how the drug affects generations in terms of lifestyle, motivation, drive for success, and in their daily life. It's just not the same as someone who's not a user. Once again, panelists, thank you for your time. Audience, thank you for listening. We will now hold a 5-minute question and answer session with 3 questions asked. Are there any questions? Yes.
All right. Do you think marijuana users will be taxed by insurance corporations?
All right, the question was, do you think marijuana users will be taxed by insurance corporations? I'm going to direct this question to Brendan.
Well, my opinion is that marijuana users are kind of caught in a gray zone between insurance companies, whether it be health and auto. Marijuana has medical benefits, and regarding with health companies, they can see marijuana leading to a bunch of health hazards, etc. So they could raise premiums on that to cover that. They already do that with tobacco or alcoholism-related cases. Similarly, with vehicle insurance, if you're caught in a wreck with alcohol, of course your insurance is going to go up and you're going to go to jail and get fined. But with marijuana, since marijuana can stay in your system for a lot longer than alcohol can, let's say you're driving down the road and you get in a wreck and you smoke marijuana in like 5 days. Well, if they have to drug test you because of a higher risk for, driving. So that's why.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions? Yes.
This one's for Simona, and it's, have you ever smoked marijuana? If yes, how often do you smoke marijuana and why?
The question was, have you ever smoked marijuana? If yes, how often do you smoke marijuana and why? Simona?
Well, yes, when I have a lot of work, because it helps me to relieve stress and, yeah. it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simona. We have time for one more question. Yes.
We have questions for Amanda. Have any of your students that smoked marijuana done anything out of the ordinary in class?
The question was, Amanda, have any of your students who smoked marijuana done anything out of the ordinary in class?
Well, as a professor for many years, I have seen very strange things happen in my classrooms. But the weirdest thing I think I've ever seen was a student brought a large Domino's pizza in and ate the entire thing and didn't focus on anything else but the pizza. And after he was done, he just spaced out the entire time. And I tried to confront the student after class, and he ran away from me. So that is the weirdest thing that has ever happened in my classroom.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Thank you, panelists, for answering the questions once again today. Thank you for being here and your time. Thank you, audience, for directing your attention toward this panel. Have a good day.